Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Sapphire Foods India Limited, we thank you for taking the time to join us today for this landmark event in the journey of the company. Welcome to the virtual brokers and analysts meet on the announcement of the company's forthcoming IPO. Before we begin, I'll take a moment to introduce the spokespersons from the company. We have Mr. Sanjay Purohit, who's the whole-time director and the group CEO, and Mr. Vijay Jain, the chief financial officer.
Yes.
We also have senior investment bankers on the panel who represent the lead managers for the IPO. Santosh Verma, Executive Vice President at ICICI Securities Limited. Vishal Bankar, Vice President at IIFL Securities Limited. Gautam Dhaliwal, Director at B of A Securities India Limited. And Kriti Goyal, Vice President at JM Financial Limited. I'll now do a quick walkthrough of the conference guidelines. All attendee microphones have been placed on mute. We'll have a presentation by the company spokespersons, followed by a Q&A session. The questions can be typed in the Q&A panel available to you, and they'll be read out to the management as usual by the moderator in the Q&A session. I now invite Santosh Verma from ICICI Securities to initiate the proceedings. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Sapphire Foods Limited and the book running lead managers to the issue, I would like to welcome you all to this virtual conference. It is indeed our pleasure to introduce to all of you Sapphire Foods Limited. It is one of Yum's franchisee operators in the Indian subcontinent and Sri Lanka's largest international QSR chain in terms of revenue for the fiscal year 2021. Sapphire Foods has the non-exclusive rights to operate restaurants under 3 of Yum's leading brands, namely KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell, all 3 brands of which consumers are very well aware of. As of June 30th, 2021, Sapphire Food owns and operates close to 209 KFC restaurants in India and the Maldives, 239 Pizza Hut restaurants in India, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives, and 2 Taco Bell restaurants in Sri Lanka. Before I speak further on the company, let me introduce both Sanjay and Vijay, who are present with us and will take us through the company together. Sanjay Purohit is the CEO of the company and has pursued his mechanical engineering from Mangalore University and is also an alumnus from the Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore. He has over 30 years of work experience across consumer product categories, including food and apparel retail, packaged food, and paints. Vijay Jain is the CFO of the company and holds a bachelor's degree in commerce from Mumbai University. He is also an associate of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and has over 18 years of experience in finance. Now, coming to the details of the issue, the IPO consists of an offer of up to 17,569,941 equity shares at a price band of INR 1,120 to INR 1,180 per equity share of the face value of INR 10 each. The IPO opens for subscription on the 9th of November and closes on the 11th of November, with the anchor book opening on the 8th of November. With this, I would now request Sanjay to say a few words, followed by a presentation of the company. Thank you.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much. Today is Dhanteras, very auspicious day. And on such an auspicious day for all of you all to come and join us in this presentation, I'm very grateful. I'm joined by my colleague Vijay. Vijay is the CFO of the company. And over the next 20-25 minutes, we'll try and give you a good insight into Sapphire Foods. We are a fairly young organization. We came into operation only in 2015-16. At that point in time, Yum had a whole host of small franchisees that they operated, and they were looking to consolidate. Most of these franchisees were subscale. So we merged about 8 small franchisees together and got them into Sapphire Foods. We acquired about 250 stores at that time. Over the period of the last 5-6 years, we have doubled the store base to 482 restaurants, 220 KFC, 260 Pizza Hut. The numbers are slightly different from what Santosh said. Santosh's numbers were end of March. These numbers are end of September. From a revenue perspective, we ended FY21 at 1,020 crores, and our EBITDA margins of 18.9% pre-ESOP were among the best in the industry. One of the words that you will hear Vijay and me talk about right through this presentation is this omni-channel store format. This has been our belief ever since we acquired the business. And by omni-channel, we simply mean a restaurant that is optimized to do dine-in, delivery, as well as takeaway. This has helped transform the whole performance and the financial trajectory of our business, as we'll explain. Our geographical presence, as you'll see from the map, is almost right across the country. However, there are large parts that we operate only one brand in. Overall, KFC and Pizza Hut together, they operate in 10. KFC operates in 10 states of India, Pizza Hut in 11 states of India, and these states contribute roughly about 56-57% of India's GDP. So you will know India is divided into 2 franchisees, Sapphire Foods and our sister franchisee. The reason to talk about this geographical presence is to help you understand that it is quite a sizable territory that we operate in. The top 8 cities in the QSR space are also extremely important, and KFC operates in 5 out of these top 8. Pizza Hut operates in 6 out of the top 8. These are the simple takeaways that we'd like to leave you with at the end of the presentation. There is an accelerated shift from unorganized food services to organized food. And within that, the quick service restaurant format is seeing the highest growth. We've got 2 very powerful brands in KFC and Pizza Hut. KFC is the #1 chicken brand in India and #1 brand globally. Pizza Hut is the #2 brand in India and #1 in Asia. So these brands, over the last 5 or 6 years, we have been able to build scale. And today our EBITDA margin is among the best. And these brands offer tremendous scope for future growth. We've done well because we believe in the power of execution rigor. And what do I mean by that? We have a laser-sharp focus on improving customer experience. And that is enabled through an back-end operations of food safety, supply chain, technology interventions, as well as financial processes. So execution is at the heart of our business. And this is where we believe we've got some amount of competitive advantage. Again, over the last 3 or 4 years, we have put in a lot of emphasis on what is the right kind of new store economic model that will help fast-paced expansion. And really the answer has been to shrink the store size, go smaller, and at the same time ensure that sales are not compromised. And that can happen only when dine-in, delivery, takeaway, the omni-channel format that I talked about, all 3 of them work very effectively. That has reduced our paybacks, and as a result of which our pace of expansion has started to accelerate. We built the internal capability, and today we have the capital to be able to rapidly drive both organic as well as inorganic growth. And Vijay will talk about that in a while. And finally, perhaps most importantly, in a service industry, organization culture plays a very huge role in determining the quality of the service. We have pride ourselves on being a little rare organization in terms of our cultures. There are 5 clear sapphire values articulated. This drives daily behavior. This drives our hiring. This drives our performance appraisal. Today, Gallup has rated us amongst the top quartile of all companies that they have surveyed over the last 5 years from an employee engagement perspective. This is the foundation on which every other part of our execution is built. And now I'll hand it over to Vijay to take us through the financial highlights.
Thank you, Sanjay. I'll just take you through all financial and operational highlights, starting with number of restaurants. And important to understand our journey over here on store addition. As Sanjay said, 2015-16 is when we acquired our first set of stores. And since then, initial period was very cautious approach in terms of store expansion. The idea was to get our economic model right. Once we were comfortable with that, our omni-channel tighter format store size, we accelerated our pace for expansion. While we opened 32 stores in FY21, first half was muted on account of COVID. Towards H2, we opened 27 stores, both brands put together. And this financial year, H1 of this financial year, we have already opened 46 restaurants, out of which 32 stores came out in the Q2 of this financial year. So this gives you an idea of our pace of expansion. Revenue, while it declined by 24% in FY21, primarily impacted by COVID in H1. H2, we saw a strong recovery once dining restrictions started getting lifted by the government. Q1 of this year, while impacted by second wave of COVID, still managed to grow our revenue by 173% over last year. And remember, last year, Q1 was severely impacted by first wave of COVID. In terms of our gross margins, in spite of a drop in revenue, we grew our gross margins last year by 180 basis points. This year, Q1, we grew by 120 basis points. Couple of areas which helped us over here, smart menu and mix management across both the brands, KFC and Pizza Hut. Small amount of price increases in case of KFC has helped us deliver this gross margin expansion. Our EBITDA grew by 450 basis points in FY21. And remember, this is in spite of the fact that last year revenue dropped by 24% on account of COVID. Still managed to deliver the 18.9% corporate EBITDA pre-ESOPs. And important to understand this ESOP impact as well. Post-ESOP EBITDA was 17.6%, pre-ESOP 18.9%. Typically, for a young company, ESOP impact is initially higher. We have taken a big impact even in a Q2. With this, a majority of impact on ESOP has been considered already. What led to this margin efficiencies? 3 areas. When I spoke about gross margins, apart from this, labor cost, operating cost in the P&L, all the 3 lines, the work which we did through zero-based cost budgeting, through our pace setter program. In our pace setter program, we basically bucket similar revenue stores together, identify a store which does exceedingly well on a particular operating parameter. It can be electricity unit consumption, it can be a gas cylinder consumption. Identify what it does differently, invite all of the stores in the same bucket to replicate that practice. So this has been a very successful program for us over the several years, has been giving us continuous cost efficiencies. So all the measures which we have taken, we believe those measures are sustainable. Q1, we delivered EBITDA of 16.3% pre-ESOP, improvement of 1,530 basis points in spite of the fact that Q1 we were impacted by second wave of COVID. This slide shows you a comparison vis-a-vis peers in the industry, Jubilant, Devyani, Westlife, Burger King. Sapphire, as Sanjay said, in a short period of time, we have built a scale of 482 stores, as well as now we are in top 3 in terms of both revenue and profitability when compared with peers and competition in the industry. This is applicable basis FY21 as well as Q1 numbers for this financial year. This slide gives you a core composition of our business in terms of mix of each of the brand. KFC India is by far the largest contributor in terms of restaurant count as well as revenue, followed by Pizza Hut India, followed by our Lanka business, which primarily consists of Pizza Hut stores and 2 Taco Bell stores. We'll deep dive into each of these 3 businesses, starting with KFC. KFC India. As of 30th of September, we have 219 restaurants. And while our revenue last year, FY21, dropped by 24%, we still grew our restaurant EBITDA by 80 basis points to 14%. Important to understand, it's a tale of two halves, especially last year. H1 was severely impacted on account of COVID, but H2 saw a strong recovery, both on revenue front as well as restaurant EBITDA. Quarter one, in spite of being impacted by second wave of COVID, especially the month of April and May, were very severe. We still grew our revenue by 245% and grew our restaurant EBITDA by 3,400 basis points. Moving on to Pizza Hut India business, as of 30th September, we operate 188 restaurants. Revenue last year was impacted by, even for Pizza, 34% drop in revenue, and profitability dropped by 230 basis points to 5%. And important to understand Pizza Hut story over here, especially last year H1 was impacted by both COVID as well as store closures. We saw 20 plus store closures last year on Pizza Hut. They were largely the loss-making stores, large size dining focused stores which we acquired. Since then, the strategy of the company is to move towards omni-channel, tighter format, compact format stores. We still carry some of the large size stores in our portfolio, but they are profitable for us, although a bit constrained compared to our omni-channel format profitability. Quarter one for Pizza Hut, we saw 203% growth in revenue and 4,480 basis points growth in terms of restaurant EBITDA. If we deep dive into the brand and the customer proposition of Pizza Hut, and it's important to understand, we're really excited by the opportunity which Pizza Hut presents to us. The four key pillars on which the Pizza Hut story is built, starting with the customer always loved us for our dining experience. They loved our product quality year after year. So this is one area which we continue to retain even when we go tighter and compact in terms of our store size. Value positioning is the second aspect. We always came across initially expensive, a bit premium kind of a brand. A couple of years back, we redid our entire menu card in terms of the pricing strategy, introduced everyday low pricing, introduced several meal options. This has enabled us to position ourselves at par with other QSR brands in the industry. Along with this, we never came across as a great delivery brand to the customers. However, with our advent of aggregators and our partnership with our aggregators few years back, it almost created a level playing field for us. And to top it, we invested hugely in our own digital assets. So this hybrid model of partnership with aggregators as well as our own digital app meant that our omnichannel strategy, where we maximize the use of assets across all the three channels, is possible. So we went tighter in terms of store size and omnichannel in terms of the format. Cost optimization measures, which I spoke about, all these four pillars together meant that we have completely transformed the business model for Pizza Hut. This is what we've been successfully rolling out over the last 3.5 years. And in a way, this has been an inspiration from our Lanka operations. Lanka operations, we operate Pizza Hut stores, which are tighter format, omni-channel stores, and they have been delivering profitability in high teens. And this is what we've been trying to replicate successfully in India, taking inspiration from our Lanka business. Deep diving into our Lanka business, 73 restaurants as of 30th September current year. It's an outstanding business for us, a rockstar business, by far the #1 QSR chain in that particular country. Consistently delivers profits in high teens year after year for us. If you look at the revenue last year, in spite of COVID, we dropped only by 4% and grew our restaurant EBITDA by 330 basis points. Current year, quarter one, while impacted by second wave of COVID, still grew our revenue by 52% and our restaurant EBITDA by 860 basis points. So a consistent performer for us in terms of Sri Lanka operations. Moving on to some of the key investment highlights, we'd like to bring out eight key points over here. Starting with large addressable market, you guys would be well aware of India macro fundamentals, which works in our favor, plus the industry tailwinds, which the quick service restaurant industry enjoys, means that we have a huge opportunity ahead of us. The organized food services sector is expected to grow at a CAGR of 15% and almost double by the end of FY25 to 3,000, close to 3,200 billion rupees. And within that, the QSR industry is expected to grow faster. The contribution is only expected to improve from presently from 47% to 54% mix in the food service sector. Along with the we have leading QSR brands in form of KFC as well as Pizza Hut. KFC is by far the largest QSR serving chicken brand in India and the world. In Pizza Hut, we have second largest pizza chain in India and largest pizza chain in Asia. India as an industry probably still at a very nascent stage. There are probably only 5 or 6 players of scale in terms of the QSR play. And when you compare this with any other market, Western market, probably there are dozens of brands. So quite a nascent. And within those 5 brands, Sapphire Foods has 2 powerful brands in form of KFC and Pizza Hut. The numbers which you see are the restaurant count amongst all the QSR operators in the country. Along with the leading QSR brands, we have a differentiated product and value offerings. What we mean by differentiated over here is in terms of our KFC, the fried chicken, in the case of a Pizza Hut, the pan pizza. The customers love them, the customers love their quality. And for a very simple reason that they're freshly made. And what we mean by fresh over here is, in case of KFC, starting from a raw chicken to marination to breading to frying happens at the restaurant every day for us. Similarly, in case of a pizza, starting from flour to dough to pizza base to final pizza happens at the restaurant every day. This is what gives us the freshness to the product, and this is what differentiates us vis-a-vis the peers in the industry. We have a menu card which straddles all parts of the day, meal options as well as snacking options. We deliver standards which are on par with the global requirements of Yum. Value offerings both at an entry level as well as abundant value. And we provide accessibility to our customers through omnichannel platform, through dining, delivery, and takeaway. We enjoy a very strong relationship and partnership with Yum. Yum Brands is one of the global leader in terms of which operates 50,000 restaurants worldwide. We have access to Yum's global expertise in terms of product and marketing innovation, in terms of the digital capability, operating standards. And on the other side, in India, we operate as a one system in terms of our commercial negotiations, in terms of our raw material, capex commercial negotiation. This delivers us economies of scale. In terms of our arrangement with Yum, we have rights to operate stores in certain specified territories across Indian subcontinent. Our tenure is 20 years at a store level. We have entered into development agreement with Yum. The purpose of development agreement is quite simple. It gives Yum the visibility to open in terms of minimum store commitment year on year. And in return, Sapphire is eligible for certain incentives. These incentives can be in form of store initial fee waiver, a royalty or a marketing waiver, or a combination of these. Our standard royalty and marketing fee is in the range of 6%. This was before any waiver which we received from Yum pursuant to development agreement. And we're allowed to operate, acquire non-competing product categories with Yum's prior approval. Sanjay spoke about omnichannel. The logic behind the omnichannel strategy is very simple. It allows us optimal use of assets. The maximum investment in the restaurant is in the back of house, the kitchen equipments. Might as well sweat the assets across all the 3 channels, which is dining, delivery, and takeaway. And this is how we have designed our stores to deliver the best of experience in each of those channels. Dining, we focus on contemporary customer experience. Takeaway, contactless ordering, and payment gateway. In case of delivery, as I said, we operate a hybrid model, a partnership with aggregators, as well as our own digital app, meant that we have been continuously increasing our delivery mix, which was 21% in FY19, now moved to 42% in FY21. Huge focus on the back end. We believe this is the engine of the organization in order to enable us to deliver consistent customer experience as well as consistent operating standards. Huge amount of focus has gone into this, building the back end of the company over the last few years. Food safety processes, we follow the global standards of KFC and Pizza Hut. In supply chain, we own the direct relationship with vendor partners. We directly procure from them. I spoke about the one system commercial negotiation, which gives us economies of scale in terms of our raw material and capex price negotiation. Huge focus and investment on technology side as well. We are probably one of the rare organizations who have invested in restaurant level SAP. They have been deployed at all our stores across both the brands. And recently we rolled out a new POS system, point of sale system, across both the brands, across all the stores. These 2 investments are very important for us. They enable us to deliver consistent guest experience, consistent operating standards, and at the same time, no compromise on the financial controls and governance. Again, the way the organization is structured, starting from the marquee investors, private equity players, the professional board, the professional management, means huge amount of focus and emphasis on financial controls and governance, the way we are set up at various levels, starting from board committees, to the point where we have regular audits at a restaurant level 3 times a year. and probably one of the rare companies who has their own data analytics team at a corporate level, which continuously tries to keep a check on what are the financial controls and governance are delivered are of the highest standards. We are ready with our new store economic model. This is emanating from the fact that our omnichannel strategy allows us to maximize revenue across all the three channels and allows us to go tighter and compact in terms of our store size. If you look at the KFC journey, from an average store size of 2,736 square feet, we have now come down to 1,400, 1,500 square feet. Similar story on Pizza Hut, from a 2,400 square feet, we have come down to 1,200, 1,300 square feet. So on both the brands, if you look at roughly 39 to 40% reduction in the size of the store, and this has enabled us a reduction in capex of 17 to 18%. Why the reduction in capex is not in line with the size of the store? For a very simple reason, that the majority investment goes in back of house, the kitchen equipment. Now one can imagine with the reduction in size of 40%, what it does to our rentals and what it does to our operating cost of the store with the reduction of 40% in size. And all this while we continue to deliver similar amount of throughput and revenue. The average daily sales which you see, we continue to maintain that. The drop in FY21 which you see on both the brands is on account of COVID. Otherwise, we're holding on to those revenue. So this compact size of the store, the omnichannel strategy, reduction in the capex, reduction in size enabling the reduction in operating cost and the rentals of the store, holding on to the revenue means that our paybacks have improved compared to what we were when we acquired the stores or what we were initially opening the stores. The below chart gives you comparison vis-a-vis peers in the industry. Pizza Hut and KFC, as I said, we have gone tighter and compact with our omnichannel strategy. This gives us a unique advantage as we move forward in terms of our expansion, allows us for deeper penetration as well. Spoke about the management team. It is a management team that has a diverse experience across wide variety of industries, backed by a board of directors, which is completely professional, and professional private equity players, some of the most marquee names in the industry. The tone at the top is driven by this particular set of people and the board, the investors, and the management. And this is what drives the value and the culture of the organization, which Sanjay emphasized at the beginning of the presentation. In terms of our future strategies, twofold strategy. We believe we are well placed as an organization to take advantage of future opportunities. India presents probably a multi-decade opportunity. As I said, the sector itself, the food service sector, the organized food service sector is expected to double. And within that, the QSR sector, the quick service restaurant sector, is expected to garner a major share, close to 54%. On the one side, we'll have an organic growth in terms of our strategy, where the idea is to accelerate conversion from unorganized food services towards our brand. And this is already starting to reflect in the way we are expanding our stores. As I said, H2 of last year, we opened 27 restaurants. H1 of this current financial year, we already opened 46 stores. And within that 46 stores, 32 stores got rolled out in Q2 of current financial year. So this gives an indication of our expansion, the way we have gone about it over the last 12 months or so. On the other side, to actively pursue inorganic growth, explore acquisition of high quality and scalable QSR brands. And this can be in complementary categories, either in existing or new geographies, for which we have built the capability over the last several years. And in the recently concluded a private placement round a few months back, we raised capital of 474 crores. And so this is the firepower or the cash on the balance sheet, which allows us towards our expansion goals. And this is one of the reasons why our IPO only has offer for sale and it does not have primary, because we have already got the capital on the books pursuant to this private placement round, which happened a few months back. In the end, I would like to just summarize the same key takeaways which Sanjay said at the beginning of the presentation. Sapphire in a short operational history. We have two global brands in KFC and Pizza Hut. Developed scale with 482 restaurants. Has EBITDA profitability of 18.9% pre-ESOP, amongst the top 3 in the industry already in a short period of time. With a focus on customer experience and operation excellence, driven by executional rigor, day in, day out. And now that we are ready with our new store expansion model in form of a omni-channel tighter format stores, we can look at expansion for which the capability and capital is already in place. And at the center of it, the heart of it is the value-based work culture driven by professional and experienced management team. Thank you, guys. Over to you, Gaurav, for the Q&A session.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that insightful presentation. We'll now open the floor for the Q&A. We've already received some questions, so we'll take those up first. Meanwhile, I'd like to remind everyone to post their respective questions in the Q&A panel. We'll try and best to ensure that all questions are answered. However, due to the limited amount of time, we may not take any repeat or follow-up questions. The first question. Could you please point out the key differentiators between your counterpart Devyani and yourselves as franchisees of Yum?
So I won't like to comment on our sister franchisee. However, I'll reiterate the Sapphire story. In a short period of time, we acquired a business that was not doing well. We've turned it around. We've been able to rapidly expand our store footprint to 482 stores. In terms of both revenue as well as in profitability, we are among the top 3 in the industry today. And a young company led by a professional management, supported by a professional board and professional promoters, I think our story going forward also going to be strong.
Thank you. Next question. Has the company received any royalty waiver during COVID or any of the recent times?
So we enjoy a very strong relationship and partnership with Yum. And pursuant to that, we were able to renegotiate our development agreements in terms of our store targets. Yes, the incentives were also renegotiated. However, royalty, if you understand, royalty is linked to the revenue of the company. And as the revenue dropped during COVID time, the royalty also dropped. So in a way, it's an equal partnership where both us as well as Yum got impacted. So nothing specific on the royalty side, but yes, the development agreement was renegotiated where both the store count as well as incentives were renegotiated.
Thank you. Next question. Who exactly is the promoter entity? Is it a private equity company or is there any other shareholder that is the promoter?
So while the promoters, as mentioned in the document, is Sapphire Mauritius, which is the holding entity, along with QMT or trust. The Sapphire Mauritius, which is the holding entity, has private equity players as investors in that, starting from Samara, who has been there with the company from day one when we acquired those stores from Yum. And the recent private placement round, we had Creator, TR Capital, and NewQuest as the other private equity investors in the holding entity. Together, the Sapphire Mauritius and QMT are nominated as the promoters of the company. Both these entities put together hold close to 52% share capital in the company.
Thank you. Next question. Why is the store level EBITDA margin for Pizza Hut and KFC lower versus the competitor in India, despite getting waiver on marketing spend on 83 KFC outlets?
So again, I would like to reiterate and what Sanjay said. We'll like to focus on our journey, the way we came into existence when we acquired stores 5 to 6 years back. Starting from there, how we build the scale, nearly doubled our store count. Again, in terms of profitability from where we were, and today at 18.9% profitability, we're amongst the top 3 in the industry. And again, without getting into a brand by brand comparison, if you just for the record and look at the overall profitability, Sapphire delivered 18.9% pre-SOP in FY21. The other sister franchisee probably delivered 20% pre-SOP last year. So I guess we have our own journey. Short history, but very strong history. Again, we have a very sharp strategy as we move forward, both in terms of organic growth as well as inorganic growth. And with the Sapphire's execution ability, we would like to focus on that. And if we keep delivering with the same consistencies, I'm sure we have a bright journey ahead.
Thank you. Next question. We saw in a QSR IPO earlier, Burger King, that the master franchisee had laid out a roadmap for the next few years in terms of store opening. Do you have any such pre-decided number of stores that you must hit?
So,
which I'll take this. So we do sign what is called a development agreement with Yum. And the purpose of that development agreement with Yum is really a commercial arrangement. It enables Yum to get a perspective on the number of stores that we will open in the near future. And it gives us, in return, Yum offers us certain incentives to open the number of stores. So our current development agreement has just been recently signed and goes into existence from January of 22 for the next 5 years. The specific numbers, unfortunately, Gaurav, I'm not able to share because of the SEBI restrictions on being able to share future information.
Just to correct, the agreement is valid till 2026 for both KFC as well as Pizza Hut.
Thank you both.
And this is just again to clarify, this is just the development agreement. This is not an indicative of a store tenure. A store tenure is a 20-year tenure, and that's the agreement at the store level.
Each store that you open has a 20-year tenure.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Is there a possibility of Yum Brands appointing more franchisees in India for Pizza Hut and KFC?
So today, Yum has 2 franchisees that operate in India. When we just perhaps rewind the clock to 5 years ago, they had 8 different franchisees or 9 franchisees. They consolidated 8 franchisees with Sapphire Foods. At that point in time, they could have gone with just 1 franchisee, but for whatever reason, they chose to open. They chose to work with Sapphire Foods. At this moment, Sapphire Foods and our sister franchisee both have enough and more opportunities for growing and scaling the brand. And I think this was what will continue in the future. But I don't think I can make a definitive comment either ways.
Sure. Thank you.
Just to add again, Gaurav over here, in terms of the territorial distribution, the territories have been distributed either with the Sapphire or with the other sister franchisees. So that's how the territorial distribution has already happened across India.
Next question. Are there any plans to go beyond the 3 brands that you already operate, considering that there are only 4 or 5 brands in QSR in India?
Certainly, right from day one, when we acquired a business that was not going well, we set ourselves a lofty aspiration that can we one day become India's best restaurant operator. At that time, it was more like a moonshot. Perhaps over the years, we will get closer to that aspiration. And therefore, from a capability perspective, we developed capability to be a restaurant platform player. So while KFC and Pizza Hut have enough and more opportunities to grow and scale, we will look at inorganic opportunities also, whether it is being present in other geographies with Yum or being able to take differentiated brands in the QSR space and be able to scale them, which is really one of our execution IPs.
Sure, thank you. Next question. There is another Yum franchisee which is getting aggressive by acquiring Pizza Hut delivery rights pan-India. What is your view on tackling this?
So again, if you look at territories between us and our sister franchisees, the omni-channel format, which is dine-in delivery plus takeaway, is quite distinct. We operate in the south and west of the country, and our sister franchisee operates in the other parts of the country. the territorial rights for the delivery-only format were given many years ago, even before Sapphire Foods came into existence, and they continue even today. So technically, delivery-only formats can be opened in our territories by the sister franchise. However, there are two points to consider here. Like I said, right from the start, Sapphire Foods has believed that neither a dine-in only format store nor a delivery focused format store works. What ideally works, if you have got omni-channel format where dine-in, delivery and takeaway works, simply because much of the investment goes into the back of the house, and therefore the front of the house, you invest much lesser sums of money. But if you are able to get dine-in sales, it enables you to deliver much higher pay or much quicker paybacks than perhaps only a dine-in or only a delivery focused store.
Just to clarify, this delivery format store is being talked about in context of Pizza Hut and Pizza Hut only, not in case of KFC. So the KFC states which we operate, the 10 states, we operate in distinct states. There is no overlap over there. And as I said, these states contribute 56% of India's GDP. Similarly, on Pizza Hut, the 11 states which we operate, they contribute 57%. On the omnichannel format, again, there is no overlap. And even on the Pizza Hut delivery format, where technically they can open in the territories of Sapphire, there's a distinction in terms of a trade area. You cannot open a delivery format stores where Sapphire already has a store within a certain time limit in terms of a drive time, so that you don't cannibalize and address the same customer.
Sure, sir. Thank you. There are a number of questions on valuation. So I'm just going to club them into one and direct it at you and the bankers. So there's one question on the valuation that states there was a preferential allotment made at close to 544 per equity share in August this year. So could you please justify the increase in price from 544 to nearly 1100 plus at the moment in the IPO?
So again, what goes into each event, I would talk about first the private placement side on the round which happened in August. And it's important to understand the reason behind why the private placement round happened so close probably to the IPO. The first was we had to solve for a promoter requirement. We are a private equity driven company. All our investors have been there with us probably from day one. The fund horizon coming to probably, and some required partial exits maybe. To solve from a promoter requirement was the first part. The second part was to have a lock-in requirement from a Yum point of view. Right now, 25.1% of our equity capital is locked in with Yum, in a way almost on a perpetual or indefinite basis. To solve for this, we had a private placement round a few months back, where some of the incoming investors who came in, along with Samara Capital, who has been there with us since day one, they have locked in their 25.1% of capital with Yum. So this was more of a strategic round, a private round. And having said that, some of the shareholders who are putting up offer for sale in the current round, even after the offer for sale, they would continue to be shareholders of the company. This would probably demonstrate the trust of them into the company. For the current round, which is the IPO round, in terms of the valuation, I would put it to our banker partners for that to be answered.
Yeah, so perhaps Santosh or Gautam, one of you could take this.
Sure. Why don't I just...
Vishal, why not?
Yes.
So as regards as the pricing for the IPO, we've done an extensive round of roadshows for the management with institutional investors, both domestic, foreign, across all sorts of categories. We've seen very healthy demand at this sort of pricing level from these institutional investors. Of course, you'll see a reflection of that in the anchor book also, which will be made public on the 8th evening on the exchange websites. We believe the pricing has been set in a manner which is fair and one that is seeing good demand from all segments of investors.
Thank you, Vishal.
Thank you, sir. Next question. The pizza category in India was popularized primarily by the delivery model. In this backdrop, would you continue to look at omni-channel stores going ahead? Delivery only would probably mean that you could use cloud kitchens to deliver pizza and further reduce your capex.
So perhaps that statement is incorrect. For a long period of time, Pizza Hut was the #1 brand in the country, and that was on the back of a very strong dine-in experience. I think what the market started to, or what consumers started to appreciate, was a brand that could do dine-in as well as delivery, and therefore ensure that the product reached homes. This is where perhaps Pizza Hut didn't do as well. As we have corrected this model and got stronger and more competent in delivery, we are finding that the combination of all three channels just makes the brand and stores more accessible to consumers. During the COVID period, this emphasis on delivery really helped us, because in the absence of dine-in, in the absence of any dine-in business, it was only takeaway and delivery that worked. But today we are seeing very strong recovery in dine-in. And our own philosophy is that dine-in is not going away anytime soon. Dine-in is here to stay, simply because if you look at consumer entertainment options, going to a mall, going to see a movie and then eating out is all part of the entertainment package for a consumer. And therefore, whether it is in the big cities or in the small cities, as restrictions open, dine-in is opening up really well. And finally, from a cloud kitchen perspective, again, like I said, if the significant portion of investment is in the back of house in the kitchen, and if you're able to add a much larger chunk of business from a dine-in perspective at a small additional cost, why won't you do that? And therefore, a store that delivers and promotes dine-in takeaway always works better than a store that is only doing delivery like a cloud kitchen. And finally, I think the physical store also enables the consumer to know that you are in a particular locality. The one big issue that we've seen with cloud kitchens is that getting consumers to be aware of the brand itself becomes exceedingly difficult. And I think, therefore, our strategy of omni-channel is here to stay, is perhaps the better strategy as we go forward.
Thank you, sir. Next question. What worked for Pizza Hut in Sri Lanka, which has led to the superior store-level profitability despite lower gross margins? And why has Sapphire not replicated that in India yet?
Yeah, so as Vijay said, really he drew up that chart which said there are things that we do really well at Pizza Hut: great product, wide range of menu, the dine-in experience where you're served in proper cutlery, you're served in pans, your range of beverages and desserts is quite wide. And then apart from this dine-in experience, you also have takeaway and you're very competent at delivery. This has really been the Sri Lanka model. And as we acquired the Sri Lanka business, these were the lessons that we learned, and we started to employ in India and started to work with Yum to say that this is how the brand perhaps needs to pivot. Also, from a value perspective, I think we had to nail this value piece, and this has been the sort of top up for us as more and more consumers discover that we are as affordable as our other competitor, as affordable as any other QSR brand. The people that we are getting in are first of all, we are able to improve transactions, and we are getting a completely different profile of consumers coming into our stores. People who have perhaps come into our stores for the first time because this value proposition is so strong.
Thank you, sir. Next question. How are you planning to make the company profitable on a bottom line level?
So again, I would like to put things in perspective. Our first set of stores we acquired in 2015, 2016. Since then, build a scale in a reasonably short period of time in terms of store count at 482 restaurants. Revenue last year, in spite of COVID impact, we crossed 1,000 crores in terms of revenue and delivered a very respectable EBITDA margins of 18.9% pre-ESOP, and already been there in amongst top 3 in the industry. And as I said previously, the opportunity what lies ahead of us in terms of the growth which is expected in the food service, organized food service segment in particular, and within that QSR industry in particular. And with our plans of expansion, a twofold plan, which is both organic growth as well as inorganic growth, as we keep building the scale, this would help us deliver not just EBITDA, it will help us deliver probably PAT profitability as well.
Thank you. Next question. At the risk of repetition, because there are a number of questions around this again, could you elaborate on what are the key differences between the dine-in and the PHD, that is the Pizza Hut delivery stores?
So a dine-in format store has a wider product range to offer. While orders are taken at the counter, they are served on the table with cutlery, or in pans, and therefore heat of the product is all maintained. So the dine-in experience is like perhaps a fine dine restaurant. The ordering experience is like QSR. In a delivery-only format, and there are enough number of seats as perhaps that locality requires. So there are most of our restaurants will have 50 plus seats. In a delivery-only format, the dine-in experience perhaps is a little compromised. You would have much lesser number of seats, if at all. Ordering is at the counter, the range is limited. The consumer has to go to the counter, get product for himself, which is perhaps after 12 or 15 minutes. And then it is served in cardboard boxes. And therefore, the whole dine-in experience is quite compromised. So this is the inherent difference between these two formats. Now, again, it might not be relevant for our competitor who has built their whole story on delivery. And therefore, this dine-in experience also is acceptable. I think in the case of Pizza Hut, we have noticed that consumers, because they have this kind of dine-in experience, embedded in their minds, and this is one of the biggest differentiators for them. In many cases, they reject this when we compromise on the dine-in experience. They perhaps are not too happy with the brand. And I think the context of the brand and the difference in the dine-in experience, I think they are inextricably married together. And hence, delivery only versus an omni-channel is a very different story.
Thank you. Next question. How is territorial exclusivity decided in areas where the sister franchisee has delivery rights and we have omni-channel stores?
As I said previously, first of all, this delivery rights is more of a delivery format, right? And that too, I would like to qualify it's for Pizza Hut format and not for KFC format. Within the same territory, if Sapphire has a store and if the sister franchisee wants to a delivery format Pizza Hut store, PHD format store, It is restricted by the Yum guidelines in terms of a drive time from a existing Sapphire store. We typically take 8-minute kind of a drive time, and 360 degree of our existing Sapphire store. You cannot plonk another store, because what that would mean is that you would cannibalize the existing customer or address the same customer. And how this 8-minute drive time is arrived at is by a very simple logic. From time taken to receive an order, to prepare and cook the food, get the pizza ready, out with the rider, you are able to serve 8 minutes to 10 minutes from your store. And this is how it is demarcated, that you cannot plonk another store in the same trade area. A trade area is the terminology which we use internally amongst us. And this is how defined, that you cannot plonk another store in the same trade area, so that you don't cannibalize and address the same customer. Having said that, I would just like to add one more point. I think while they have right to probably open a delivery format store, I think the bigger focus area for us is that at the end of the day, as Sanjay said, whether it is competition, peers, they are good for the industry, good for the category expansion. And again, while the brands would have existed for a couple of decades, as a country, I think we are at a very nascent stage in terms of QSR penetration. Many countries, when you look worldwide, they would have dozens of brands in terms of QSR. So the opportunity right now, what exists is the bigger opportunities from converting from unorganized sector towards organized food sector and towards the QSR brand. I don't think we are in really out there to snatch from each other. It's how we focus in terms of our own strategy. I think there's enough headroom for everyone to grow as we move forward.
Thank you, sir. Next question is on the working capital. So given your intention of going omni-channel, how do you see working capital levels evolving or being maintained going forward?
So while I would not be able to comment in terms of future guidance on the working capital, what we can tell you is that in terms of working capital, we are hugely efficient by a simple fact that in a way we are retail, all right. So largely all our sales are realized almost on an immediate basis, except for a very small portion, let's say, which comes from aggregator delivery sales. And all our payments to our creditors, our vendor partners, are probably at a higher days in terms of what we make them payment. So we typically experience a negative working capital.
Thank you, sir. We're coming to the last 2 or 3 questions now. Could you tell us how many franchisees are there for KFC in India, and how many franchisees are there for Pizza Hut in India?
Two franchisees for KFC and Pizza Hut. Us and our sister franchise.
Thank you, sir. Next question. What kind of capex do you require in order to open one store? And are there any different types of stores, or is there just one omni-channel store that you intend to roll out?
So yes, we intend to roll out omni-channel format stores, but yes, there could be at times a different format. For example, in a mall, at times you can be part of a food court where you would end up opening an express format where there's the seating is common with the mall food court and you don't have your own seating, so that's an express format. But other than that, what we roll out, irrespective whether it's a mall or a high street, is a full-fledged restaurant where you have your own kitchen, back of house, and your own front of house in the city. The capex for FY21 for KFC per store was in the range of 1.7 crore, and this is for a 1400 to 1500 square feet store format. And this is after a 20% reduction or close to 18% reduction compared to our earlier format stores, which were in 2,400 to 2,700 square feet range. Similarly, on Pizza Hut, similar story in terms of format. It's an express format at times, which we end up opening in a mall, a food court. But largely, we are focused on the restaurants, whether it's a mall or a high street, with both back of house and front of house. Our capex for the Pizza Hut store, again, omnichannel store, is in the range of 1.3 crore rupees. This is again FY21. And this is also seen a reduction of 17% from where it was previously. As the store sizes came down from 2,400 square feet to 12 to 1300 square feet store size for Pizza.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Next question. Are there any plans to reduce debt in the near future?
So right now, if you look at our balance sheet, it's a very, very strong balance sheet. As I said, during the private placement round, we actually raised a primary of 474 crore. And currently, in terms of debt, it's just close to 70 odd crore rupees. And this is a relationship which is there with our banking partner, HDFC over here. We will see and evaluate the situation as we move forward, but difficult to comment at this point in time whether we intend to repay that or not.
Thank you, sir. And the final question for the day. We've received a couple of requests to repeat the price band and IPO dates. So if you could please let us and the audience know the price band and the issue opening dates.
So our price band is 1120 rupees to 1180 rupees. And we open a public issue on 9th of November, Tuesday, and we close it on 11th of November, which is Thursday. And we look forward to your participation and support.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. That brings us to the end of the Q&A session. Now let me invite Vishal Bankar from IIFL Securities for the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending the broker and analyst meet of Sapphire Foods India Limited IPO. Sapphire Foods undoubtedly is the largest franchise operator of yum brands in India, with leading QSR brands, a high level of focus on the quality of food being served and the customer experience, backed by a strong operating model, one of the very few coming out stronger out of COVID, and an experienced professional management at the helm. We are very proud and very excited in bringing a high quality company like Sapphire Foods to the public markets. A quick recap of the offering details. As just mentioned earlier, the issue will open for subscription on Tuesday, 9th November, and close for subscription on Thursday, 11th November. The price band for the issue has been set at 1120 to 1180 per share. At the top end of the band, the issue size is approximately 2,073 crores. 75% of the offering will be available for allocation for institutional investors, 15% for non-institutional HNI segment, and 10% for retail. The issue is seeing strong support from leading institutional investors. The anchor allocation will open and close one day before opening of the issue, that is on 8th of November. And the details of that will be available on the exchange websites on the evening of the 8th of November. I wish you all a very happy Diwali and a prosperous New Year, and looking forward to your support to making the IPO of Sapphire Foods India Limited a great success. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vishal, and thank you, everyone. Just to add on, please feel free to reach out to us for any further queries or email us at investor@sapphirefoods.in or ipo@adfactorspr.com. And we will do our best to reply to your queries within 48 hours. Take care, stay safe, and have a happy Diwali. Thank you.
And happy Diwali from Sapphire Foods to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for joining us. Happy Diwali.
Bye.
Thank you.
Recording stop.